Today, we're going to dive into a story that's, well, it's part biochemistry, part detective novel. It's all about a case of mistaken identity, but on a molecular level. A trick so clever that it convinces the human body to welcome a deadly poison and literally build it into its very bones. And that really is the central question here, isn't it? How can our own biology, this incredible system that's been fine-tuned for survival over millions of years, become an unknowing accomplice in its own downfall? The answer? Well, it lies in a fascinating and honestly a pretty terrifying chemical deception. So, where does a story like this even begin? Well, not in a fancy lab. It starts in real communities, where doctors started to notice something strange. Clusters of devastating illnesses were popping up, and they seemingly came out of nowhere. What were they seeing exactly? Well, for one, there were these unusual spikes in leukemia. That's a cancer of the blood-forming tissues. And they also saw a very rare condition called Navajo Neuropathy, which is this severe nerve-damaging disorder found almost exclusively in mining families. The big question was, what on earth was connecting these tragic and seemingly random cases? So the investigation had to widen. It moved from the patient to the environment around them. And as investigators started searching for that common thread, it led them deep into the earth itself and back in time to the legacy of the Cold War. Turns out the geographical link was a place called the Grants Mineral Belt, a huge uranium-rich formation. Now, during the Cold War, this land was mined heavily for uranium, to fuel the nuclear arms race. But here's the twist. Uranium itself wasn't the direct culprit. It was just let's call it the parent in a very long and very radioactive family line. You see, radioactive elements don't just sit there. They decay. They're constantly transforming into other elements over time in what's called a decay chain. So you start with uranium-238, the parent, and it slowly breaks down. After a whole series of steps, it eventually becomes something else entirely, radium-226. And that is our prime suspect. Okay, so we've identified our poison, radium. But that just brings up an even bigger question. How did it actually get inside people's bodies and cause such specific, targeted damage? This is where the story gets really fascinating, because it all comes down to the chemistry of the body and an incredible act of molecular impersonation. All right, so look at this. On one hand, you have calcium. It's absolutely essential for life, right? Our bodies are designed to seek it out to build strong bones. On the other hand, you have radium, a heavy radioactive metal. They seem like total opposites, but they share a chemical secret. Because of where they sit on the periodic table, their atoms are structured in a very similar way. And to the little bits of machinery inside ourselves, that means they look almost identical. This whole phenomenon has a name: molecular mimicry. It's basically a Trojan horse on a chemical level. The body sees radium in the environment, maybe in the water or dust, and its systems go, hey, there's that calcium we need, and it actively pulls it in, completely unaware of the danger. So the key here is that the body isn't just passively contaminated, it's actively participating in its own poisoning. And once that deception works, the consequences are just catastrophic. Because once the radium is inside, it has a very specific destination, which has earned it this truly chilling nickname, the Bone Seeker. So here's how the betrayal actually plays out. Because the body thinks radium is calcium, it does exactly what it's programmed to do. It sends it straight to the bones. And it doesn't just, coat them. It literally uses the radium atoms as building blocks, locking them deep inside the bone matrix itself. The poison becomes a permanent part of your skeleton. And this is what makes radium so uniquely dangerous. It's what's called an alpha emitter. Now, alpha particles are like tiny, powerful cannonballs, but they have almost no range. Your outer layer of skin can easily stop them. But when the source of those particles is inside you, lodged right up against your living bone marrow, there is no shield. It becomes an internal emitter, firing those cannonballs directly into one of the most sensitive and important tissues in your entire body. So now we can finally close the loop. We can connect this tiny atomic-level event all the way back to the diseases that kicked off our entire investigation. Think about it. The bone marrow is the factory for our blood cells. When those alpha particles from the decaying radium start bombarding it, they just shred DNA. This constant, relentless damage kills off the stem cells that are supposed to make new blood. And when the body desperately tries to repair all this broken DNA, it can make mistakes. It can lead to mutations. And those mutations are the seeds of cancer, which is what leads to leukemia. This same heavy metal poisoning is also what's behind the terrible neurotoxic damage of Navajo neuropathy. So it started as a simple chemical similarity, just two elements in the same column of the periodic table. It ends in this devastating legacy of disease. This whole process, from the mind to the molecule to the marrow, it leaves us with this really profound and difficult question about consequences. The waste from this process will be radioactive for longer than all of recorded human history. And it really forces us to ask ourselves, what is our responsibility to the deep future for the problems we create today?